Christian Parenting.
Hey, and welcome to the Christian Parenting Podcast. This is a place where you can bring your real self, no matter what that looks like today or where you are, whether you are folding clothes, driving around, cooking dinner, whatever you are doing. I am glad that you are here to get the encouragement and resources that you need to raise your kids to love Jesus and to flourish. Today is a really fun conversation. I am talking to Danny Loeffelholz about summer camp and building resilience and independence in our kids. So we talk about the challenges that parents face in allowing their kids to take risks, the benefits of controlled risks, and how camp experiences can positively influence kids' faith and their personal growth in all of those areas. Danny shares his real-life experience with the power of camp, and I also share how camp has impacted me and my own kids. So listen to the end because I talk about even how when my son had a so-so experience at camp, he was still changed positively and continues to return because he loves it so much. We also talk about some of the common concerns parents have about sending their kids away because I know that can be really hard too. I definitely get it. Ultimately, our goal as Christian parents is to point our kids to Jesus, and today's conversation helps us to think about one more way that we can do that. So I hope that you enjoy. Hi, Danny. Welcome to the Christian Parenting Podcast.
Hey, thanks, Steph. It's a joy to join you today.
Yeah, I'm excited to have you here. We're going to talk about risk-taking and summer camp and adventures and letting go of our kids a little bit and all sorts of fun stuff. It's kind of crazy to think that summer camp registration is going on now, but it is. I'm never ready for it. I'm like, how am I supposed to be thinking about August?
When you said that, my stomach turned a little bit as well. So somebody shared the other day, we're about 100 days away from camp. And I thought, oh my gosh, the train is coming. It's almost here.
Yeah. I mean, it's so fast. Like, I feel like once you get past the holidays, then there's January, which is 8 million days long. And then all of a sudden it's summer.
That's so true.
Yeah. Yes. Okay. Well, before we go and we talk about all that stuff, let's learn a little bit about you. Tell us about yourself, what you do, and about your family too.
Yeah, absolutely. My name is Danny Loeffelholz. I have the joy of serving at Sky Ranch camps in East Texas, but we also have locations in Colorado and Oklahoma as well. I've been in ministry now for 24 years, so we'll be now. Have kind of played, I like to call it tennis, between Christian camping and the local church. After I graduated from college, I worked as a student pastor for a church in Oklahoma, and then was hired by a Christian camp and worked there for 3 years as a director of their high school camp and then one of their family camps. And then my wife and I and family were simply attending a church during that time, and they offered a position to come on as a pastor in Tyler at Grace Community Church. And I pastored for 15 years there, loved it. And then about 3 years ago, Sky Ranch reached out and pursued just a conversation, and which ultimately turned into becoming one of their vice presidents here at Sky Ranch. And I've been here again for just a couple of years now, having a chance to work with directors of our different programs like summer camp and outdoor education, retreats, and so on. And absolutely love serving them and having a chance to invest in families through Christian camping. I love it, but a greater joy I have in my life is being married to an amazing woman. Her name is Kara. We've been married for 22 years, and she is a third grade teacher in Tyler, and we have 3 boys. And so we have a senior in high school, we have a 7th grader as well, and then now we've ventured into college with our oldest. He's a freshman at the University of Arkansas. And so we just simply know boys in our family. And fun fact, we've never seen Frozen. Our boys have never asked about that. But we have we love raising our boys, love shepherding them, investing into them. And it's a true joy for Kara and I to be parents of our 3 boys.
Yeah, that's amazing. Okay, and then I always ask, you have to describe your family in one word or phrase. Frozen is not it.
Frozen is not it. I would say we are a fanatic baseball family. And that's probably the best way I can describe it. We all three boys play baseball, and Kara is a phenomenal baseball mom as well. We actually go to Major League Baseball parks for our family vacations. And so we have tried the whole tour of hitting every Major League Baseball park, and it's taken us to some fun places as well. And so we love baseball in our family. And so that may sound really lame. I don't know, but it kind of describes us.
Yeah, no, I don't think that's lame. Both my boys play baseball, so.
Awesome.
And I think it's the best summer sport because it's so beautiful.
Absolutely. Yes.
I mean, like, there's nothing better than just sitting outside at a baseball field and watching a game. It's just your day or your evening.
And it's kind of a slower paced game, to where I think it's a little bit more enjoyable. And it's taken to us, probably like you and your family, it's taken us to a lot of places we never would go or travel to in small towns. But also we've met a lot of great people by just sitting in the stands, throughout hours of watching our boys play baseball.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm from Minnesota. Have you been to Target Field?
Okay, that's a great question. We have not. Okay, I hear great things about Target Field.
It is truly a great state. I mean, I probably have a bias, but it's great.
And Minnesota in the summertime sounds a lot more appealing than Texas in the summertime. So
it is. It is not in January, but in August, it is the place to be.
Well, hey, you'll appreciate this. Then with our youngest, we have ventured into hockey, which I know nothing about and continue to learn. Actually, this past weekend, we traveled 4.5 hours for a hockey tournament. So we've dipped our toes into hockey now.
Yeah, neither of my boys play hockey. I kind of didn't present it as an option for them because here in the great state of Minnesota is an entire culture. I mean, like, it is probably like football is in Texas, hockey is in Minnesota. So it's very intense. So I was like, no, we're not going to do that. I didn't realize that baseball also can get really intense. And then my daughter dances, and nobody told me that dance is essentially the same as hockey. So I didn't quite succeed in keeping sports casual in my family, but I tried.
Oh, that's awesome. That is awesome. Well, the best players, by the way, on our hockey team are from Minnesota. That's not surprising.
Yeah, no, that checks. Okay, well, let's move on and talk about risk-taking in kids in camp. I feel like this is a topic we've talked about a few times on this podcast, and it continually is brought up because I think parents today, myself included, although I'm trying to get better at it, are feeling anxious about like letting their kids take risks that even we took as kids. So from your experience working with so many kids and families for so long and then raising kids, like, how do you see fear shaping the parenting styles of this generation, and how is it impacting our kids?
Yeah, Steph, this is such a great question. And I kind of feel like I need to preface it by saying for Kara and I, we have not figured this out completely. We're alongside every other parent in trying to navigate through these waters. And I think it's a really interesting time, though, in regards to parents feeling a little bit anxious. And how do you strike that balance of wanting to give your child room to grow and have a venture, but also not become the overprotective parent. And we see it. I mean, I saw it as a youth pastor, certainly see it in Christian camping as well, and definitely saw it in pastoral ministry. And we see the temptation, I think, in our own parenting that it's really easy to default to helicopter parenting, or maybe a lighter way of putting it is bubble wrap parenting, of just wanting to put our kids in bubble wrap and try to make sure that nothing bad ever happens to them. But I don't really think this is anything new. I think certainly when we were kids that there were plenty of overprotective parents during that time. And Kara and I have talked a lot about this, that I think there are times that we want to default back to how do we protect our kids to the point that they don't experience pain in life. And I'm not sure that's necessarily the best approach always. And certainly not saying, hey, let's throw our kids out there and never protect them and um, try to put boundaries around them. But we've seen, I think, in our own parenting, some of the benefits at times of walking our boys through times to where they experience pain. I think a prime example of that happened last year with our now freshman in college. When he was going through the process of applying for different schools, there was kind of one dream school that he had, and he had applied, he had the grades, and he met all the standards for admission for the school. And we waited and waited and waited to hear back from that school. And when we did, it it wasn't the offer that he had hoped for. And I remember Kara and I actually got the email first, and we were just broken, I think, for our son. And then we knew that he had to read the email from the school, and he was disappointed, yes, but he also was pretty crushed. And I think in that moment, I know I wanted to take all the pain away from him. And you feel the pain of your kids, and all that to be said, looking back now, and I think how the Lord was leading through that whole disappointment that he experienced, it ultimately God led him to the school where he's supposed to be in Arkansas now, and it is a perfect fit for him. But I think he had to walk through some pain and disappointment in that, and build some resilience as well. So that that was really convicting, I think, for us of how do we not um, set it up to where our son is absent of experiencing pain, but how do we walk him and parent him through experiencing pain? And I think it's turned out to be great.
Well, because I feel like we know as parents that those challenges, building resiliency, those are things that they have to experience for developing into adults. Like we know that in our heads, but it's really hard to allow it because we tend to sometimes lead by our emotions with our kids, which is not what you're supposed to do, but it's easy to do because we love them so much, So I think
Yes.
that's where a lot of this like controlled risk comes into play, and it can be so helpful for building some of that resilience. So let's talk about like what a controlled risk looks like and how camp kind of helps to create an environment for that.
Yeah. Yeah. I think this is really, it's fascinating to think about, again, how do you place your kids in environments or situations that is that it does pose a little bit of risk, right? But it also doesn't allow them to sink the ship. And so I love the thought of controlled risk. I actually have a friend of mine who is a pastor, but he's also a therapist as well. And he talks a lot about the importance of placing our children in situations where they may experience maybe some failure or pain, but it's controlled, but for the purpose, like you said in the last question, that it would really help form resilience within them. And so I think that is, I think it's important to say, hey, by no means are we placing our kids in situations to where we provide no boundaries or we provide no control and protection, but also to provide some space within those boundaries to where our kids can experience adventure and also some risk as well. And so I think, yes, camp is a great place to experience that because everything from ropes courses to adventure and activities um, that are all very safe, but also provide children, I think, with an opportunity to step out of their comfort zone and to risk a little bit as well, but to know that it's a safe place to step out of their comfort zone and to step into risk as well.
I'm a big camp person, and I know obviously you are too. So I think that, but what's hard right now is I want my kids to go to camp, and they do go to camp, but it's hard to find friends for my kids to go to camp with because not everyone's comfortable with overnights. And I totally get that. Not all kids want to go to an overnight. And it is that kind of like overprotection. How do I let go? Is this the right type of risk? Like it's hard. So, but I feel like truly my faith grew like leaps and bounds at camp. Like camp is where I actually met Jesus for the first time.
Mm.
And now as a parent, I love seeing my kids My daughter hasn't gone to camp yet. She's going this summer. But my boys have gone, and I love seeing them come home from camp because they're just like exhausted and they're dirty and they just like smell like outside. And then they're just like an inch or two taller from the confidence that they gained from being away for an entire week from me and having to like figure out, how do I go to bed when I'm afraid at night? And how do I don't know, get myself dressed, which is funny to wash their clothes afterwards. Cause I'm like, I packed you 10 pair of underwear and 10 pair of underwear were not worn here. You know, it's a little alarming, but it's so good for them. So tell me about like, from what you've observed, how have you seen kids and their faith change from going to camp? Cause I think that if you're talking about a Christian camp, away from the benefits of risk taking, like there's so many benefits to the faith going to camp.
Absolutely. And, I did not grow up going to camp. And it just was not an option, I think, for our family. And, but I did attend a camp on a retreat when I was a junior in high school, I believe it was. I thought it was the most incredible thing ever. Even just being there for a weekend, I thought, oh my gosh, this is amazing. But then having worked for 2 camps after that, I think it's really clear to see the benefit of having college-age students who passionately love Jesus and also are very servant-hearted and wanting to invest their lives, wanting to pour out their lives into campers. I just don't know if you could put a price tag on them. And I mean, I'll take camp hat off for a moment and put parenting hat on. Kara and I desperately want secondary influences who are Christ-centered to be speaking into our boys' lives. And so this may sound really shallow, but we want our boys to see cool college-age students, again, who are passionate about Jesus, who show that, hey, it can be cool to love the Lord. It can be cool to follow Christ. But also, that we want them to see great, not perfect models, but imperfect models of Christ followers as well. And so I'm sure, Steph, for you and your husband, you experience the same thing, that you could share over and over with your boys or your kids, and you could speak into their lives, and half the time they're like, whatever, mom and dad, right? But then when an awesome camp counselor says something, it's like, oh, yes, that's amazing. Like, mom and dad have been saying that for years. Why have you not been listening to us, right? So I think I feel like that's the primary benefit of sending your kids to camp, is just being around those counselors and summer staff like that. And then I think, yes, just the whole camp experience is phenomenal. It can, again, stretch you out of your comfort zone. But we say this at Sky Ranch, we are not the only Christ-centered camp in the U.S. There are great camps spread out all throughout the U.S. that we have great partnerships with. And these camps press the same thing that we press of, number one, safety, and then fun, and then spiritual growth. And so we want camp to be a safe place for every camper to come, to be accepted, but also it's going to be physically safe for them. And it's also a safe place for them to be transparent. And then we want it to be a place where they have a lot of fun. And then obviously we want the place, just like you, for kids who don't know Christ to meet Christ, to hear the gospel. And then kids who already know Christ to grow in their faith. And to look back at that time at camp is really kind of a spiritual marker in their life, to where they look back and they go, man, that's really where I grew in my relationship with the Lord.
Summer camp is such an amazing opportunity for your kids to get to know Jesus and have the absolute time of their lives. And we have some exciting news from Sky Ranch camps. Whether your child is 6 or 16, they'll have the best week ever at Sky Ranch camp, playing hard, getting outside, unplugging from screens, and being invested in by counselors who are all about your camper's safety, fun, and spiritual growth. We are thrilled to partner with Sky Ranch to give your child $400 off their first week of overnight camp. You can just use the code CPP400, as in Christian Parenting Podcast 400, when you register at skyranch.org. You'll see the difference at Sky Ranch, where camp is crazy fun with a powerful purpose. Do you have a child who struggles with a specific subject in school? Or do you have a child who's ahead and just not getting challenged enough in the classroom? For either of those kids and anyone in between, you should go check out IXL Learning. I've talked about it before in this podcast, and it's worth talking about it again because I really believe in this program. IXL Learning is an online learning program that enriches your homeschool curriculum and classroom education for your kids. It offers practice in math, English, language arts, science, and social studies while adapting to each child, meeting them exactly where they are for what they need. Plus, IXL encourages students to be curious and empowers them to choose how to learn. And the best part is, IXL is so easy for parents. One site gets you everything you need, and IXL customizes learning for each child and their needs. Everything on IXL is organized by grade, subject, topic, and then subtopic, so it's simple to find activities for the exact skills that you are covering. And IXL offers instant feedback and explanations of new topics as kids use the program, so you can feel confident that your kids will gain an understanding of the skills that they're learning. You can make an impact on your child's learning and get IXL now. And Christian Parenting Podcast listeners can get an exclusive 20% off IXL membership when they sign up today at IXL.com/today. Visit IXL.com/today to get the most effective learning program out there at the very best price. Yeah. I think that's such a good point about the counselors. I remember my son, the first year he came back from camp, would not stop talking about his counselor. He was like, he plays football and he plays ultimate frisbee. And like all they did was play ultimate frisbee like all week, I think. And so he was like, no, I need a set. And he was just so excited about it. And I think it was so powerful for him because he knows a lot of kids his age that are Christians from his friends. Mm-hmm. He knows a lot of adults who are Christians from me and my husband and just church. But you don't meet that many college-age kids because they're all at college. So unless you have a college near your church, which we kind of do, we're having more they don't really see that very often. So I think there's some power in seeing that middle stage of life that Jesus still goes with you then too.
Absolutely. Hey, and Steph, if I could piggyback off that for a moment too. Again, I could just keep parenting hat on here and take camp hat off because our boys were going to camp long before I came on staff here at Sky Ranch. And with our youngest and our middle son, they have great friendships and really good influences in community in high school and junior high. And our oldest son definitely had that, but his peer group when he was a sophomore and junior in high school just kind of went through times of, I think, really trying to find their faith and struggling kind of with making their faith their own. Fortunately, when they were seniors, the Lord did some really cool things in them. But we just saw our oldest son kind of struggle through even finding his faith during that time and finding his people and his community at school and church. But it was really interesting because at camp, even though it was only a short period of time he was spending with them every year, he found his people. And we just saw the Lord use camp and then friendships in camp and counselors really to invest into him and kind of formed his community. And so they stayed in touch all year round. So it really was more than just their time at camp. They were around each other. But we just saw the Lord provide great community during that time for him that he just didn't find in his hometown, in his school, in his church at that time for whatever reason. And so we're grateful for the many different aspects of how God can use Christian camping to really grow our kids.
Yeah. Well, I think that camp is so powerful for developing relationships because all of a sudden you're with kids that you don't know. And then you're in a cabin and you're doing team building activities. Like all of a sudden you're up on a high ropes course with these kids. Yesterday you didn't know their name, and then you're sharing personal things. You get vulnerable as you start opening your Bible and talking about the Lord, and just having that adventure and risk taking together causes so much bonding.
Yeah.
And so I just think that's so you can't get that at home.
Absolutely. I think God does something when he takes you out of your everyday environment. And then it's just you, new friends, and the Lord. And hey, parents may love this aspect, no technology, and just disconnecting from technology for a week or 2 weeks, however long that camp session may be at whatever camp. I mean, that in itself is so worth it.
Absolutely. That's like my favorite part about camp. But it is weird. Like, I understand why for parents, it's like, well, I'm used to being able to talk to my kids every single day or text them or call them. And then all of a sudden you can't. You're like, I'm writing letters and emails. Like, what is going on?
Do we even know what that is? All right. So,
I know. And now, I mean, now we send emails to them. I don't know what Sky Ranch does, but the camp my kids go to, it's like an email system.
yep.
I'm like, man, when I went to camp, we just had to cross our fingers and hope our parents mailed a card in time.
I have to share this, but my wife worked for 5 summers at a camp while we were dating, and we were not dating for 5 summers, but we were dating towards the end of her fifth summer. And that was before we could actually even talk on cell phones to one another. So that's really going to date me there. But that summer we wrote letters back and forth, and so we still have those letters, and we try to show them to our boys because we were so proud of that. They were completely unimpressed by the letters mom and dad wrote to each other.
You're like, you have no idea how much work this.
Exactly. So but it is great. I mean, just the disconnect, right? And to be out in nature and God's creation, and again, like you said, forming new friendships and around counselors who love the Lord is just awesome.
Yeah. Okay. So talk to the parent who's feeling like, yes, in theory, I want to send my kids to camp, but I'm a little hesitant because of all the things of them being gone for a week, of if they could get hurt, if they get homesick, if they get actually sick. If anyone's ever been sick at camp, it is not a good time. So like, what advice would you offer for parents who are feeling a little concerned and trying to balance whether or not this is the right choice for their family to send their kids to a summer camp?
Yeah. Well, first I would say to a parent who's feeling any of those emotions, you're not wrong. Like I think those are normal emotions, normal feelings. Again, Kara and I, we've been around Christian camping for quite some time and have sent our boys to camp. And uh, even with our youngest, though, who you would think, okay, the two oldest have already been to camp. They've been overnight camp. They've been gone for 2 weeks, actually. So the third one is going to be fine. And that was probably the one we had the hardest time with, of letting him go. And we started wondering, did we send him too early? And is he going to be okay? Is he going to be homesick? And we saw pictures posted. I got to share this. We saw pictures posted on the camp's website, which we're really excited about. But he was going through the awkward phase of learning how to smile, like on cue. And so it looked like he was having an awful time at camp. So when we picked him up, first thing we said, "Are you okay? Are you okay?" And he was like, "Yeah, had a great time." You're like, buddy, you got to learn how to smile when you're, because mom and dad are really concerned about if you're having fun at camp or not. Um, so again, I don't think any of those emotions are wrong for parents. Now, it's worth it though, and I think ultimately you have to go back to the why behind sending your kids to camp, um, because I think if that why is strong, then I think it will help you navigate through those. And I think the why is, hey, this is an awesome opportunity for our children to go to camp, to be, again, in a safe environment, to be surrounded by new friends, to have big adventure, to be around college students, and also full-time staff who care about your child, who want to serve your child, and want to invest their lives in your child, and then ultimately to point them to Christ. And I think that why is compelling. And it does help us to navigate through this. I do think practically, whether we love this or we don't, it's a great opportunity for us as parents, I think, to trust the Lord, in knowing that ultimately Romans 8, um, nothing can snatch our kids out of the hands of God and his love. He's got them. He's protecting them. Um, and it's a good environment to send our kids to. And so I think it's a great investment. I really do. They will have so much more fun at camp than, all due respect, than they will for a week at home. Like, it's good. And your house may be awesome and great, which is fantastic, but man, it doesn't compare to camp at all. And I think also, just, and you mentioned this earlier, Steph, I mean, just the opportunity, I think, for our kids to step out a little bit on their own, and again, in a safe environment. But that's kind of a big step for kids, of being away from home. And I know it was for our boys as well, but we have seen the benefit of our boys, their faith becoming their own through time at camp. They're stepping out in adventure. And then again, the friendships that are formed. Not, I mean, our boys have formed friendships with kids across the nation that they met at camp. And that's, I don't know where else you get that. And so and again, it's not a Sky Ranch thing. I think this is a Christian camping thing, that there are plenty of great camps that are Christ centered around the nation that do a phenomenal job of safety, fun, spiritual growth for our kids.
Okay, and I have to tell you, because this is interesting. Last summer, my middle and my oldest were supposed to go to the same camp the same week. And the day before we were supposed to go to camp, we were at a baseball game, and my oldest son broke his arm. So he therefore could not go to camp. So my middle went to camp with his friend by himself, and I mean without his brother. And we were looking at the pictures all week, and he was smiling. He was having a great time. But when we picked him up, he had not had a good week because he was worried about his brother. He didn't really know. It was the hottest week of the summer. And so he just wasn't sleeping well. And then he wasn't eating well. And then he just started to not feel good. And then he got homesick, and he kind of spiraled a little bit. So at first he was like, I didn't have fun. And I'm like, okay. Let's feed you some food and put you to sleep, and we'll talk about it tomorrow. And then slowly he started telling us all the fun things that he did do, and he did have fun. But he said he eventually was able to articulate, I was really worried about Calvin. I was really hot. I didn't really feel good. I had fun, but all those things still existed that made camp hard for me this year. But he is going back to camp again. So he didn't not have a good time. And he said, the best part is that even when it was hard, I could do it. And I did it by myself. And we've talked about how, wow, that's such a skill, Griffin. You didn't have fun every single moment like you normally do at camp. This year was hard for you, but still you're going back, even though you had one hard year at camp, because you've had other perfect years at camp. But you still learned so much from that experience. And that is a gift too, in a different sort of way,
Absolutely. And I mean, that for Griffin to grow in that, and to step out into something hard, I mean, what a great opportunity for him to lean into the Lord, but also to articulate, that was hard, but he did have fun at camp. But I mean, that you can't put a price tag on growth like that. Right.
You really can't, because you can't do it at home. Because if something was that hard, you'd be like, oh, why don't you go take a nap? Why don't I get you into the air conditioning? It's so much easier to solve those problems for them at home. But he really had to figure it out, and he was so proud of himself.
Yeah. Oh, and rightfully so. Hey, Steph, one other, I think, benefit that I could throw out that actually has nothing to do with our kids at camp, but can be a benefit, I think, for parents as well. When parents drop their kids off at camp, I love asking the question of, hey, do you have any plans this week? And you hear parents go, oh my goodness, they're all your problem now. Or, they make the joke and, oh, we're out of here. But I think that if there are no more children in the home, that if all of your kids are going to camp, I think it's an awesome opportunity to invest into your marriage. And if you can, and if you take a trip, that's great. If you can't take a trip, Kara and I, we would do a staycation where our boys were at camp. And that provided, I think, just great time for our marriage and investment into our marriage as well. And so I know that's not possible for every parent of a camper to have a situation like that. But I think it can be kind of a time to focus on your marriage, with maybe less kids in the house and they're off at a safe place as well.
Well, even when my boys have gone together and it's just been our daughter at home, that's just a totally different dynamic. Or even if it's just one boy and I have two of the others at home, like it's just, it changes. Taking one kid out of the equation changes the dynamic of your home, and you can just kind of focus on other kids for a week too. And that is a benefit. Some special time.
Yep, absolutely. I think one year when our youngest, he wasn't quite old enough to go to camp, we had Camp Thad for him, at home. And just, you're right. Just did some fun things there, and it changes the dynamics, and it gives a little time to focus on maybe a younger child that you don't get those opportunities always to focus on. So
the one who usually is dragged around to baseball games.
Exactly. That's what we say about our third. He grew up in bleachers, so which is great.
Except for when Big Brothers went to camp, then he was not.
That's exactly right. That's right.
Yeah. Okay, so to kind of wrap up our time, I would love for you to add, as people listen to this podcast and they're about to leave, like, what is one thing that you want every parent to know?
Oh my goodness, it's a great and hard question, right? Gosh, I think if I could just narrow it down, I would say, what is the most important thing that can happen to and for your child? And I truly believe this. Seen it in my own life. I think we've seen it in our parenting as well. Is that it's meeting Christ. It's the power of the gospel in their life. And it is their lives being transformed by Jesus, so that their life reflects Christ in the way that they talk, the way they live, the way they think, the way they serve, the way they love, and their lives ultimately are a reflection here on this earth of Christ. And I know that we all have dreams for our kids, and we want them to get into the right college and get the right career and meet the right person to marry, and to have the right house, and then hopefully the right family. And none of those are wrong. That's none of it's bad. But is that the ultimate why, I think, for our kids? And I think Christ, not to simplify it too much, Christ is the ultimate why for their life and the ultimate hope, I think, for their life. And so, more than the American dream, for them to, again, meet Jesus, know him, but also to have their lives transformed by Christ, to where they reflect Christ in this broken, fallen, dark world that we live in too. And so, I think that changes a lot about what we hope for, what we pray for, and even how we parent our kids. And so, not to give a sermon here by any means, but I would just encourage parents that would be your greatest hope and prayer for your kids, is them meeting Christ and being changed by Jesus.
Yeah, no, that's so good. Parent with the big picture in mind of them knowing Jesus, and all the other little things fall into place. Sometimes easier than other times.
Hey, and I'll give a shameless plug for your podcast. I think podcasts like this help reinforce parenting with the big picture, and provide practical tools and actually how we do that day in and day out. And so I think you're doing a great job, Steph, in your podcast. I think it's fantastic.
Thank you. That's so sweet. Okay, can you tell us where, if people want to know more about Sky Ranch, where you work, or find a different camp, do you have resources for that you can point us to?
Yeah, absolutely. You can go to skyranch.com. It's the easiest place to connect, I think, with us here. Again, we have a youth camp in Texas. We have a retreat center in Oklahoma for churches, and even non-religious groups can come to. And then we have family camps in Colorado, too, that are out there as well, where the whole family can come. But skyranch.org or .com would be really the easiest place to go for that. And if you're nowhere near Texas, Colorado, or Oklahoma, and you're looking for a good Christ-centered camp, maybe closer to your home, Christian camping is called 3CA, Christian Camping, the Christian Camping Association. Again, CCCA, you can go to their website and you can locate great camps to send your kids to, or maybe even family camps to go to as well. And so I think those are probably the easiest ways to get connected to a good camp.
Perfect. I'll put that in show notes so people can find it. But thank you so much for being here. I appreciate all of your insights, and it was fun chatting with you.
I really enjoyed it. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much for listening. Don't forget to like, follow, share, and review this podcast. I appreciate it so much, and it does make a difference every single time. So thank you. I have the links that Danny mentioned in show notes, so definitely go check that out. Thank you for being here. Have a wonderful week. May God bless you and your family this week. May you and your kids get curious about God and His Word together and grow in faith as your family spends more time with Him.
All you homeowners have unique needs. Some feel the need to leave up holiday decorations year-round. Others have the need to use their garage as practice space for their new metal band. And because each homeowner has unique needs, Geico helps you get the right coverage for your home and what's in it. That way, you get exactly what's right for you, even if your needs are unique. Get more with Geico.